The emergency lights cast long, grotesque shadows across the hollowed halls of the Royal Scottish Museum as Michael stumbled, his breath catching in his throat. The ancient artifact, the cairn stone of Caldon, pulsed with a faint, malevolent light, vibrating against its reinforced glass display. A chilling whisper slithered through the vast, empty space, promising not just fear, but a creeping, inescapable madness. His flashlight beam died, plunging him into utter darkness, leaving only the stone's sinister glow and the echoing rain outside to accompany his final desperate gasp. Michael pulled his collar tighter against the biting chill that seemed to seep through the ancient stone walls of the Royal Scottish Museum, despite the heating. It was his first solo night shift, a baptism by fire into the eerie quiet of a building teeming with centuries of history. Outside, Edinburgh was being lashed by a relentless autumn storm, rain drumming a mournful rhythm against the Gothic architecture. The museum, usually bustling with life, was a mausoleum now, its vast halls echoing with nothing but the distant rumble of thunder and the steady drip of a persistent leak somewhere in the older West Wing. Peterson had left with a gruff warning about the alarm system's quirks and a casual mention of the museum's character, a euphemism Michael understood to mean its age and the creaking sounds that came with it. Michael began his rounds, his heavy boots sounding unnaturally loud on the polished marble floors. He checked the main gallery, the Celtic collections, moving methodically, scanning each display case with the practiced eye of someone looking for an anomaly in a sea of fixed objects. He found himself inexplicably drawn to the newly unveiled exhibit in the Whispering Gallery, the cairnstone of Caldon. It was an unassuming slab of dark volcanic rock, etched with crude, indecipherable runes said to be unearthed from a forgotten burial site in the Highlands. Its story was one of ancient curses and unexplained disappearances, a typical piece of local folklore that usually made for good tourist fodder. Yet, standing before it, Michael felt a prickling sensation on his skin, a cold dread that had nothing to do with the museum's draft. The stone seemed to absorb the ambient light, a silent, brooding presence. He shivered, attributing it to the cold and the lateness of the hour. The first hour passed uneventfully, a lull before an unseen storm. Michael moved through the Egyptian wing, the stern faces of pharaohs staring blankly from sarcophagi. He logged his checkpoints, everything in order. Then, a faint flicker in the corner of his eye. He stopped, sweeping his flashlight across the hall. Nothing. He blinked, dismissing it as fatigue. A moment later, a faint, dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across stone, coming from the floor above. He froze, listening intently, his heart quickening. He waited, straining his ears over the relentless rain, but the sound didn't repeat. He ascended the grand staircase, his hand tightening on the railing, checking the upper galleries. The Viking exhibit was still, the medieval armor gleaming dully in the dim security lights. He checked the ancient weaponry display, then the Roman artifacts. Everything was precisely where it should be. He reviewed the security feed from the camera covering that section, but saw nothing out of the ordinary, just the grainy, silent footage of empty corridors. A subtle but unmistakable drop in temperature hit him as he passed the Whispering Gallery again. It was a pocket of unnatural cold that seemed to emanate directly from the cairnstone's display case. He paused, pressing his palm against the cool glass. It felt colder than the surrounding air, significantly so. He tried to rationalize it, perhaps a faulty climate control system, but the feeling was too localized, too specific. A growing unease began to gnaw at him, an irrational fear that stubbornly contradicted his logical mind. He tried to shake off the unsettling sensation, pushing it deep down. The quiet hum of the building's ventilation system, once a comforting background noise, now felt like a low, incessant growl. The dragging sound returned, this time clearer, more distinct, echoing from the research archives in the East Wing. Michael swore under his breath, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. He moved with more urgency now, his professional detachment crumbling under the weight of the inexplicable. He found the archive doors slightly ajar, which was impossible. They were always locked. Pushing them open, he swept his light across towering shelves of ancient texts and dusty scrolls. A book lay on the floor, open to a page with bizarre, swirling script. It was a hefty tome on forgotten Scottish dialects, one that would have required considerable force to dislodge. He picked it up, his fingers brushing against the rough, aged paper. As he replaced it, he felt a faint vibration in the floorboards. The security cameras in the archive wing, when he reviewed them, showed a brief burst of static, a momentary whiteout, right at the time the book must have fallen. It wasn't enough to be conclusive, but it was enough to deepen the unsettling feeling. He started to feel watched, a pervasive sense of an invisible presence shadowing his movements. The whispers, which he had initially dismissed as the wind or his imagination, returned, clearer this time. They were barely audible, a guttural murmur that seemed to emanate directly from the cairnstone, a low, sibilant sound that suggested ancient, forgotten words. He quickened his pace, a cold sweat forming on his brow. The museum's vast emptiness no longer feeling serene, but predatory. Peterson, but his radio only spat static. The shadows began to play tricks on his eyes, or so he told himself. Fleeting movements at the edge of his vision, a ripple in the darkness, a shape that dissolved the moment he turned his head directly towards it. He was in the Hall of Warriors, surrounded by silent, armored figures, when he heard it clearly, his name, Michael, called in a low, guttural voice, undeniably from within the museum. It wasn't a whisper now. It was a deliberate sound, resonating with a strange, unnatural timbre. He spun around, his flashlight sweeping wildly, his heart hammering against his ribs. Nothing. The armors stood sentinel, their empty visors staring back. A wave of profound nausea washed over him, a primal fear he hadn't known since childhood. As he navigated a narrow, dark passage leading to the staff break room, a sudden, icy touch grazed his left arm. It felt like a skeletal hand, dry and chilling. He cried out, stumbling backward, his flashlight clattering to the floor. When he scrambled to retrieve it, his arm still prickled with the unnatural cold, but there was no one there. The feeling of being watched intensified, a malevolent gaze that seemed to bore into the back of his neck. He felt exposed, vulnerable. Paranoia began to set in, clouding his judgment. He found himself looking over his shoulder constantly, jumping at every creak of the old building. Near the whispering gallery once more, his flashlight beam, usually strong and steady, began to dim and flicker erratically, struggling against an unseen force, as if the darkness itself was fighting back. An invisible, magnetic force seemed to pull Michael back to the whispering gallery. He fought it, tried to make himself continue his rounds, but his feet moved inexorably toward the cairnstone. It called to him, a silent, insidious summons. As he approached, he noticed something new, something profoundly disturbing. Faint, unsettling carvings and symbols, barely visible before, now seemed to deepen and shift on the stone's surface, pulsing faintly with the same malevolent light he had glimpsed in his nightmare. They were intricate, grotesque patterns that suggested forgotten rituals and unspeakable acts, appearing as if etched there by an unseen hand in the last few minutes. Or perhaps, he thought with a growing sense of dread, they had always been there, waiting for him to truly see them. A crushing weight of despair settled upon him, a profound sadness and fear that felt alien, not his own. It was as if his very thoughts were being invaded, his mind becoming a conduit for something ancient and evil. The air around the stone grew heavy, thick with an almost tangible sense of dread. The rain outside intensified, a furious drumming on the museum's glass roof, mimicking the frantic beat of his own heart. He could hear faint, echoing screams now, distant and ethereal, but undeniably present within the vast emptiness of the building. He pressed his face against the cold glass of the display, trying to decipher the shifting symbols, his breath fogging the surface, but the patterns only seemed to writhe and contort, mocking his attempts at understanding. He felt a creeping cold spread through his veins, a chill that had nothing to do with the external temperature. A horrifying realization dawned on Michael. He was trapped. The radio, his only link to the outside world, crackled with unyielding static, a harsh hiss that mocked his increasingly desperate attempts to contact Mr. Holmes. Peterson. His personal cell phone, usually reliable, displayed no service, a chilling void in the digital landscape. The emergency lights, his last bastion against the overwhelming darkness, began to fail, one by one, sputtering and dying in distant wings, plunging vast sections of the museum into an absolute, suffocating blackness. Only the faint, eerie glow from the cairn stone and the sporadic flashes of lightning illuminating the rain-streaked windows offered any visual anchor. He tried to make a break for the main entrance, but the grand oak doors, which he had checked minutes before, now felt impossibly heavy, refusing to budge. He pushed, he pulled, he hammered against the ancient wood, but they remained stubbornly sealed. He felt a growing sense of panic, bordering on hysteria. Every exit seemed to be either locked, jammed, or simply vanished into the oppressive darkness. He retraced his steps, trying another route, but the familiar corridors twisted and turned, seeming to lead him in circles, each turn bringing him back to an area he had just left. The museum itself felt alive, a labyrinthian entity mocking his attempts at escape. From within the cairnstone's display case, he heard a faint scratching, a soft, insistent scrape that sounded like fingernails dragging across stone, coming from inside the artifact. It wasn't the glass. It was deeper, more unsettling, resonating from the heart of the ancient rock itself. He covered his ears, but the sound seemed to penetrate his skull. The scratching intensified, morphing into a rhythmic thud, a hollow knocking from within the very stone. Michael stumbled back, colliding with a display of ancient weaponry, sending a rusty medieval helmet clattering to the floor. The emergency lights in the whispering gallery sputtered, then died completely, plunging the entire space into an oppressive, absolute darkness, broken only by the eerie, pulsating glow of the cairnstone. Its light, once subtle, now flared with a malevolent intensity, illuminating a grotesque, shadowy figure that seemed to ride within the stone's reflections. It was a distorted, skeletal form, barely discernible, yet undeniably present, stretching out as if trying to break free. He screamed, a raw, primal sound that was instantly swallowed by the vast, suffocating silence of the museum. The air grew impossibly cold, stealing the last vestiges of warmth from his body. He felt a presence, an invisible weight pressing down on him, stealing his breath. His own reflection appeared on the glass, twisted and terrified, but behind it, the shadowy figure solidified, its form becoming clearer, its ancient, empty eyes burning with an unholy light. Michael stared, paralyzed by an unimaginable terror. As the image in the glass reached out, its spectral hand phasing through the reinforced barrier, not touching him physically, but plunging deep into his mind, an invasion of his very soul. He collapsed, his body convulsing, his eyes wide and vacant, fixed on the malevolent glow of the cairnstone. The whispers filled his head now, no longer distant, but a cacophony of ancient voices, overwhelming his senses, consuming his consciousness. The storm outside raged, a furious accompaniment to the silent, terrifying triumph within the museum, where the cairnstone of Caldon continued its eternal vigil, forever guarding its newest secret. Michael lay motionless, his fate sealed, another echo in the museum's cursed history.